Thank you, Renee, for joining us. The last time we were together, you shared your insight, your knowledge on some of the unique stressors that international students, we're thinking a lot about our Caribbean students who come to the United States, might face. The change in structure of classes, how things are taught, learning styles. We have doing essays, we have doing tests. And then we kind of moved into some of the mental health considerations of individuals who might have more serious mental illness in college, and some of the difficulties that those who are from outside of the country face in getting connected to care. In this episode, what I want us to kind of hone in on is, what do people need to know about mental health and mental health services before and during their time in college? What do young people need to know, especially if you're coming from the Caribbean to the United States, to make for an easier, softer landing in the event that you need to access those kinds of services? What do people, what do students, what do families need to know?
So I want to say two things first. I want to say that in the last segment, I felt like I was talking a lot about the deficits that many international students and other diverse students might bring to the college situation, college setting. And I want to challenge that because I recognize so many assets. Imagine traveling tremendous distances to go study, and to do it alone sometimes. I mean, one of the ways in which one can prepare for the experience is to figure out ways to help young people translate their experiences from one setting to the other, to remind them of the things that they have done well, or the ways in which they have done well. Sometimes it's through perseverance and hard work and connections with key individuals at a university or college, building relationships that are outside the academic, the formal, faculty student model, looking around and seeing where are their resources. I would say that the students who would just pop in and see me and my colleagues, not just me, my other colleagues, just kind of come to understand that the university setting in the United States is situated in such a way that there's the teaching, the key teaching, the faculty and the students, right? But then you have all these resources that have been created to support that educational, that curricular and co-curricular experience, and that it is embedded in the mission of these institutions to bring this all together. The other thing to remind students is it's in the interest of the institution to have students, to retain them and to help them to get to graduation. So international students who might come to the United States to study should understand that there are resources that exist for everybody, and that majority students, US students, and well-resourced students are utilizing these services in order to make it through college. They ought to know that there are laws in this country, in the United States, that protect neurodiversity. Knowledge of these laws should help to embolden our international students, that get once they are on this land, on these grounds, that they too are protected by these laws. They're protected in terms of distribution of their personal information. So in other words, sometimes fear that if people know that I have a mental health condition, it's going to go against me, becomes a real hindrance. When one learns that there are laws that are in place to protect those aspects of your identity, one can feel more comfortable utilizing these services. I would have students say, I don't want to go to CAPS, counseling services, because then my professors are going to know all my business. No, they will not. And if the counselor were to tell your business to your faculty without your consent, they could get in big trouble. There's a reason why, although you, Fabia, and I have known each other for years, there are things that you may have told me I haven't even told my own husband. There are laws, and there is sacred, like a sanctity around the experience that I want to convey to international students. Start with the laws. Know that they exist. Know that you're protected. Know that these resources exist. Know that you're entitled to utilize these resources. And know that peers are utilizing them and excelling because they're utilizing them. So I would start there with the broadest kind of, because it is less about which particular institution one is at and more about an awareness of the framework of these United States, the colleges and universities in the United States. And I suspect also abroad, but I know less about the UK and other places. Know a little about South Africa, but only because I have 3 grants in my portfolio. That is essential. Knowing that you have rights, knowing that you have resources, knowing that you are protected, your identity is protected, can go a long way in figuring out ways to advocate for your mental health and sometimes to discover what your needs are. College, we say, is a time of discovery and exploration, and it should be. It should be a time of discovery and exploration cognitively, right? You're exploring your different fields and how you learn and what you like to do. Socially, yes, you're getting to know people here and there, but so much more is figuring out who you are and how you tick and what you need, and learning the language and the framework to communicate to others what you need. And challenging the presumption that help means weakness. Help is really collaboration, and that is an asset. And learning how to do that well, both in terms of collaborating with a mental health provider in your own care or collaborating with peers on a project, is key. So I don't know if you want me to go more specific than that, but I felt a need to provide
I think that it's
something
great.
very broad.
I think that's really helpful because I wasn't even thinking in those broad terms, and I do think it's useful because people are coming from a different context where oftentimes the personal is not really the personal. It's shared amongst family, it's shared amongst friends, they're, professionals in the community. And so even helping people to understand that there's a distinction there is important. Mm-hmm. And then this idea that you do have a right to good health, to healthcare, especially if you are in the university setting. That's something that you can seek out, and that there are many services that you may not even be aware of that exist just to help you cross the finish line. Because the onus is on the university, and they do want to look good on paper. They do want their students who have matriculated to graduate from the college and university that they are a part of. So that's a really great place to start at. Maybe you could share 1 or 2 more specific things.
Mm-hmm. When I think about other kind of tangential issues that I recall coming up a lot and exacerbating mental health challenges, some of it had to do with other aspects of one's social identity, sexual orientation, for example. Feeling that ever presence that one has to perform a social identity that may or may not feel like it is truly who they are. And in some cases, we talk about kind of being bicultural in some ways. Over the years, I would meet students who could not be their full selves when they go home. And this duality, trying to figure out how to work through that, how to make sense of that for oneself is a present, especially, and I bring this up especially when we're dealing with a context in which some nations will kill you for being gay, right? So that is ever present. So students are bringing that with them. And it breaks my heart, and it used to break my heart when I would see it playing out again. There's a way in which one must learn how to live in their full self, and how one must learn how to utilize resources to talk through those feelings that are real and just important to kind of process, instead of existing in a constant state of fear, paranoia, worries about being found out. That is a stressor. Now, I know that will be very difficult for us to put in a brochure or a notepad, a handbook, and send it down to the school system in Jamaica and say, by the way. But I think there needs to be an overarching approach to say, when you get to the US, find ways to fully connect with resources that can help you make sense of your life. And for some people, the most dominant piece might be their sexual orientation. For others, it might be things dealing with at home. It might be economic. It might be, that level of vulnerability. Often, students will also feel a little bit of, I see this less with international students, the imposter syndrome, but I suspect it exists. This idea that, oh, I'm not deserving of this opportunity to be in the United States and study at this elite institution. That might be a part of it. But then the other coin on the other side is this idea of, I've abandoned my family. I've left them. There are people back there who need me. There is a shame.
Yes, and it's I can relate to that, and a feeling of selfishness. That I'm pouring into myself as opposed to giving to the family that needs more at this time.
I got that from a lot of international students who would share that struggle. And it really was the other side of the imposter syndrome, because it wasn't, people know they're smart. They know they've worked hard. They know they're deserving. And there is a feeling that, but there's so much need back home. Because I'm smart, because I'm deserving, because I work hard, I should be back there helping them. It's real. And I think that is a piece that is not easy to just kind of pass over, because it's almost like an ever-present kind of weight on one's shoulders while studying, while trying to make it through the feelings one has about those who aren't with you. So I don't know how we work through that, besides from going back to the mental health services and figuring out ways to connect and practice the vulnerability necessary to talk it through, and to figure out ways that you can start to make sense of it, if not for just for another day, like just to make sense of it so that one can get to a place where I know this isn't great, but I used to tell students, well, let's just get you to a place where you can help even more. I mean, that was my whole thing. Just kind of, I felt sometimes that I was kicking the can down the road, because I couldn't deny what they were saying was legitimate. I mean, I had students who were sending money home. to help out. I got to help pay that rent. I got to help. And this was happening in US too, US students. And my white colleagues would say, well, you just need to focus on yourself. I said, you cannot tell them that. That is not helpful. That is another piece of it, I think. The tension between
and learning how to hold those two together, because it is true. And I can speak from a place. I am so happy that I kind of pursue the career that I'm in right now, because it affords me financial freedom that it couldn't even enter into my consciousness. There was no previous example of it. But I had to deal with a lot of tension over the years. I really did. Yeah. So I resonate. Thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your knowledge, for your wisdom, for your vulnerability, for your stories, for your kind heart. We thank you for your work, and we're hoping that this is helping whoever is listening to it.